Hey nerds, what's up? So, is it just me, or does it feel like every year recently, earlier in the year, you start feeling dead inside already? Like January and you're already like, I'm over 2023. So if you're in one of those moods, I decided today to give some book recommendations for when you're feeling that way inside. Book recommendations that are either gonna make you laugh, make you feel really good by the end of it, and just kind of give you like the uplift that you need. So let's get into it. My first category is 3 books that will make you laugh. And in this case, these books all made me laugh out loud legitimately. And my first recommendation is Good Omens by Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman. It's no surprise, I've talked about this book before. It's one of my top 10 favorite books of all time. I absolutely love this book. Pratchett and Gaiman's wit together, like the way that they worked, is just so perfect, and the story is so funny, and it's about the end of the world in a way that doesn't feel burdening or scary, but rather hilarious and uplifting. So if you haven't given this one a chance yet, I highly recommend it. Even if you've given Terry Pratchett a chance or Neil Gaiman a chance and didn't like them separately, I know a lot of people where that's the case and they still liked Good Omens because together it has a very different vibe. So highly recommend it. The next book I'm going to recommend is Redshirts by John Scalzi. This book was so funny. I talked about this when I reviewed all of my Hugos if you missed that video. This book really takes, obviously, the idea of red shirts to the extreme, and we follow a red shirt as a main character. Now, as someone who grew up with Star Trek, this was extra funny, but I feel like you don't need to have the Star Trek background to enjoy this book or find it funny. I think the concept of a red shirt has grown large enough now that you would understand what that is. This book, from literally page 1, I was like, okay, here we go. I'm gonna enjoy this book. I enjoyed every second of it. It was so well done to be both an earnest story, but one that really plays on a lot of tropes and finds the hilarity in them. Highly, highly recommend. My last book in this category is The Princess Bride by William Goldman. Now, I've been trying to get people to read this for a long time, and I'm going to recommend it again. If you grew up like I did, loving and watching The Princess Bride, the book is completely worth a read. It is very funny. In fact, funnier and wittier than the movie, even though I still absolutely adore the movie. You are going to gain a lot out of this. If you haven't heard anything about it, I don't want to say anything. I'll just say that I was fooled several times in this book to a way that I'm always going to remember the experience of reading it. Just a really good experience. If you haven't seen the movie, why are we here? Just watch it, then read the book. That'll make you feel better, I promise. Okay, my next category of books aren't necessarily, I would say, funny, but they're the kind of books that leave you just feeling really happy and good at the end, filling you with like heartwarming, none of this dark, really heavy stuff. And my first recommendation in this category is Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. You guys, I've been talking about how much I love Tress, and I ended up reading Tress on January 1st because I got the ebook, all the backers got the ebook, and it was like, I remember sitting there thinking, I am so glad this is the book I chose to read as my first book of 2023. It set me off on such the right foot. It is a lot more whimsical and fairy tale-like than any of other Sanderson's works, if you read any of his. So it has a much lighter tone, and as it is a standalone, again, the whole story is complete. There's nothing you have to worry about by the end. It's just a really pleasant, nice ride from beginning to end. If you haven't picked this one up yet, I highly recommend it. I don't know if you can get the ebook right now if you didn't back the Kickstarter, but you can pre-order either the nice copy or next month, I believe, a regular paperback non-special edition will be available through Tor. So there are a few ways to read if you did not back the Kickstarter. If you did, what are you waiting for? Go ahead and read it. My next recommendation is actually a book I read for this year's SPFBO competition, and that is Small Miracles by Olivia Atwater. Now, Small Miracles takes a lot of inspiration from Good Omens, so if you've already read and liked Good Omens, I highly recommend Small Miracles. But one way Small Miracles is very different is that it is definitely more on the cozy side. It deals more with the everyday to-day stuff. It is not about the fate of the world, which I think when you're looking for an easy, nice, comforting read, that is a great thing to have in a book. And I ended up really liking Small Miracles. It's very witty, very heartwarming, and I just really rooted for all the characters, and I highly recommend you picking that one up. My last recommendation may be a little controversial only because I've found reviews for this book very mixed. I personally loved this book, which is why I still recommend it, and that is How You Lose the Timewar by Max Gladstone, and I am blanking on the other author. Oh, Amal El-Mohtar. This book is really beautifully written. It's very short, it's a novella, and it uses time travel in a very interesting way. It is more of a setting rather than a plot point, and you really are just following the characters Blue and Red and their kind of rivals and how they're dealing with their rival factions. It's a very kind of fairy tale-like book. I don't know if fairy tale is the right word. It is not hard fantasy or hard sci-fi. It's just like this very kind of ethereal book, and some people really don't like that about it, and I loved it about it. So like, maybe read the description before you get into it. It is a short book. I personally just felt very relaxed by this book when I read it and really enjoyed it. And finally, I'm gonna recommend 2 make you feel books at the end here that are non-fantasy. You know, I read non-fantasy, but don't talk about it on my channel just because I mostly like to talk about sci-fi and fantasy. But I do have 2 recommendations that maybe if you've read all the other books I recommended, you might not have read these. So the first one I'm gonna recommend is actually a manga, and it is Haikyuu. Now, I forget why I got into this. So many people recommended it to me. I have read a little bit of manga and watched some anime. Back in my high school days, I hadn't really done it since then. And everyone was talking about this one. And it's like, it's a sports manga. Like me, I'm gonna read a sports manga. But finally I got convinced to pick it up, and now I'm obsessed. I think I've read 8 volumes so far. It is literally the perfect pick-me-up. They are fast to get through and just feel good vibes the entire time. Following these kids in high school, there's like one of my favorite tropes, which is the really upbeat person who becomes friends with the really grumpy person. And that dynamic just, it's funny. I always have a smile on my face while I'm reading it. So if you're kind of like maybe in a reading slump and you need something that you can finish in an hour and it's gonna make you feel good, Haikyuu all the way. I promise, even if you don't care about sports, you'll still like it. And my other recommendation in this category is Anxious People by Fredrick Backman. Again, this is a very famous book. I was one of my favorites in the year I read it. I can't remember which year, was my top 5. This book did, in all fairness, make me cry at the end, but all happy cry, like nothing, it ends good vibes only. But oh man, do you care about those characters? This is a book I still think about years after I've read it because it had such an impact on me, but in like a positive, good vibes way. If you haven't tried out Fredrick Backman, or if you've heard about Anxious People and haven't tried it, highly, highly recommend it. Again, another book you can finish pretty quickly. It moves very fast, it's not very long, and it's kind of perfect for those moments when you just need something a little bit more lighthearted. Okay. These are my recommendations for when you feel dead inside. I'd love to hear your recommendations below. There are some books on my radar that I haven't read yet. Like I'm guessing Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree would fit perfectly in this category. I'm hoping to get to it this year. Let me know your happy books that you read when you need a pick-me-up. I want to know in the comments below. And if you like these kind of videos, the best way to support me is to like and subscribe. And if you want to see what I'm currently reading as well as other nerdy rants, you can check me out on Instagram at bookborn.reviews. I'll see you next time. Bye.